G'day, legends, and welcome to the Celtic Down Under podcast. I'm your host, Jared, and joining me tonight are Sean, Liam, and Shane. How are you, Shane?
Good, thank you, mate. Coping with a hot day, and what better way to cope with a hot day than with a cool, snazzy new T-shirt?
I was going to say, we're twinning over here. You and me both got the Celtic Down Under t-shirts on. Gotta love it. Yeah, they're available. We'll put the info up a bit later on in the pod, but yeah, if you're keen on that, buy our merch.
They are quality, can confirm.
And how are you, Liam?
Well, meanwhile, I'm envying both of you being able to wear a t-shirt because I've got 4 layers on here and I'm still freezing. Oh,
Maybe you
God,
need last week's hoodie I was wearing then.
It's it's weird that you wouldn't think coming back from Scotland to Japan that it would be colder, but it is. It's about 10 degrees colder here than it was in Hamilton last week. So, yeah, it's it's a wee culture shock to say the least. But good wee holiday. Saw saw family, saw a couple of friends, saw my 2 bricks, the one at Celtic Park and the one at Ibrox. Thanks again to my mates in high school for that one.
Quality gift, quality hilarity.
Absolute quality. Aye.
Good.
But all in, good times. Good times. Good to be back though, and good to talk about Celtic again.
And how are you, Sean?
Yeah, good. A couple bits of news. I've just discovered that there's an army of redbacks moved into my garden, so that's a battle that's just beginning now. For anyone that's outside Australia, a redback is just our equivalent of a black widow spider. So I'm going to have to deal with that. And the second piece of news that I was reeling from this week was discovering that Shane is a supporter of the West Coast Eagles, the Australian equivalent of Rangers in Aussie rules. Yeah, I'm going to back this up here because I've never seen any other. The only team in the world I know that has gets more penalties than Rangers from supporters, umpires that support their own team, and they also had Castori last year to boot. So I'm saying it.
Do you want to?
AFL sense, Shane, I'll jump in for you. First of all, AFL sense, the only team that gets more penalties than Rangers or the equivalent over here would be Hawthorn. But I'll now throw back to you, Shane.
I'm wondering if Sean should disclose who his AFL team is, just for clarity.
I'm a Dockers fan, yes. Fremantle Dockers.
There we go. So for those outside of Australia, the local rivalry, if you will, of the Dockers and the Eagles. I just wonder if that was a bit pointed in that discussion there.
Yeah, but also the fact is that because there's only 2 teams in Western Australia and the umpires are all from Western Australia, they're going to support basically one or the other, and they tend to always support the Eagles, which sounds very familiar to a situation in Scotland, if you ask me.
I've been blindsided by this. I didn't know this was coming.
Classic stitch up, Shane.
Absolutely. Oh, goodness me. No more chatting anymore. No more discussions before the pod.
For your first issue, Sean, we're about the Redbacks. Nice and easy. There's a natural solution for it. You've got the one the greenies will like, and then the one the greenies won't like. So the one the greenies won't like, flamethrower, get rid of their nest, sorted, right? The one the greenies will like is you just go and get some daddy longlegs spiders, have them in your house or wherever they are. Daddy longlegs is actually the most poisonous spider that there is, but their teeth are too small to be able to be a threat to to humans. They can't bite through our skin, but they can take out pretty much any other spider in the world. So if you have a couple of daddy longlegs, they'll eat them all.
Nice. I did not know that. Trading one spider for the other. At least it won't kill a 3-year-old.
You can telegraph up on a farm, can't you? In Australia. Yeah. There you go. And there's a daddy longlegs in the corner of this room up there too. Right there. Happy days.
It's interesting because the redbacks are always at ground level and the daddy longlegs are always at roof height. So they must have some sort of battle in the middle at some point in the night.
Oh yeah, of course. It's like it'd be like what is it, the Battle of the Bastards or something like Game of Thrones or something else along those sort of lines. Battle of Helm's Deep for those nerds and stuff like that who like Lord of the Rings.
There was a social media post this week of a cow down here eating a snake. I seen, and it was bizarre. There's some weird stuff going on with the wildlife down here.
Nothing to see here. That's just normal. Welcome to Australia, mate.
I've eaten snake before.
Yeah, but you're not a cow.
Fair point.
You don't have a ruminant digestive system.
Liam, When you say you've eaten snake before, come on, choose your follow-up sentence very carefully.
Snake soup is a delicacy in Hong Kong, commonly served in wintertime. Okay, that's all.
Okay.
Go ahead and make your own jokes about me deep throating a long thing or whatever, but no, right? All I did was eat some snake meat in a soup.
Well, to anyone who's still watching, thanks for sticking with us. While we got through all that National Geo / whatever chat, now it's time to talk Celtic. So we'll start off with the game on the weekend. Celtic 2, Kilmarnock 0. I'll throw to you, Sean. You do every Monday. You're doing a little weekend roundup sort of thing that we have on our YouTube channel. Nice bit of satire there. It's been 2 weeks in. Check them out. It's doing well, mate. So thanks for that. Keep it up. So I'll throw to you first to discuss the game. I've told the boys I've been crook, if you can't tell with my voice and everything. I've got throat infection, not well. So I've only seen the highlights of the game. So I'm going to bow out on this one and let you boys talk about it because you've probably seen more of it than I have. But over to you, Sean.
Yeah, overall frustrating first half, not many chances, and a much better second half. And the kind of Shane mentioned it last week on the pod, and we've talked about it in the past, that having that lead over teams really makes a difference. A 1-goal lead for us is the same as 0-0 when it comes to what opposition teams do. So we really need that 2-goal lead, and when we did get that 2-goal lead, it did open up. And you've seen it, we hit the post 3 times. Jackie Marcus must have been so unlucky. And we can talk about him later when it comes to transfer rumours, but he put in some effort when he came on. Hatate was man of the match, which was interesting given the kind of online fake furore that was going on around him this week on Twitter. I don't know if you guys were tracking it. Which podcast was it? I don't know if we should mention him. Put up a post saying, is Hatate really that good? And had some stats to back up their point. And then Hatate made absolute mincemeat of Kilmarnock at the weekend. And he had a great game last week against Sevco as well. And then he got man of the match at the weekend. Quite deservedly so. I thought another player that had a great game as well was Alessandro Bernabe. I thought he had a lot of great touches, great movement. He still gives the ball away a little too much for my liking, but that through ball for the first goal was just outstanding. It was like a 40-yard pass, just perfect weight that Maeda could run onto without it going out of play. Something that Greg Taylor does every now and again, that just kind of defense splitting past to Maeda. And I think the reason it only happens in our left because Maeda is pretty much the only player in the world with the pace to get onto those through balls at the right time. They don't happen on the right. Like Jota and Ralston and Jota and Juranovic down there, they play kind of much shorter 1-2s and triangles and balls in behind compared to the left-hand side. And I think that is down to the pace of Maeda. So overall, we were very good. Hatate, Bernabe were outstanding. Yeah, the goals were kind of what we need to do to break teams down, and it should have been much more than 2.
Shane, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I pretty much echo most of what Sean said. The first half was pretty frustrating. We were okay, but we weren't playing with our usual zip. The passing, the pace of our ball movement, the movement off the ball just wasn't there. We got into a couple of good areas. I thought Bernabe actually didn't have the best of starts. He lost the ball a couple of times. He overhit about 2 or 3 crosses, but he slowly worked into the game. And I'd back up Sean in the sense that I think that defense splitting pass to put Maeda through, I wholeheartedly agree was outstanding. And he carried that on in the second half. And I thought that's his best game for the club so far. And it's a good step forward for this extended run that he's got. Getting back to the match itself, second half, I thought we looked a lot better. We looked a lot sharper, both with ball movement and without. And we created a lot more in that second half. And I think just to touch on a different player to what was mentioned, I thought Jota was important in that second half. I thought he looked pretty good. I thought he was actually sort of getting back to what we'd seen from him, very creative, getting involved a lot more. And you're right, it should have been more than 2-0. Like Giakoumakis, when he came on, worked hard. I was so frustrated he didn't get on the score sheet, particularly with that looping shot. Like, that would have been fantastic. But, Kelly's best defender was the goalpost in the end. Like, that hit, that stopped the game from being a rout. And look, overall, first half, relatively frustrating. Second half, much better than what we're used to. To highlight another player that I thought had a good game, just quickly, was Johnston. So I thought he looked good. And, one of the things we always query about a new player is, will they fit into the system, or how's that going to go? Seeing him, when we'd attack, almost end up at left back in the end, I think he's going to fit into the system pretty well. And he looks like he's going to be a good signing. So very happy with him so far.
Yeah, all reports on Johnston is that he's pretty much hit the ground running, and he pretty much covers every blade of grass, so he fits right in on that front as well. But yeah, I thought from what I saw in the highlights, you guys have covered it pretty well there. Should have been more. Second half was much better than the first, and there's some players there that are starting to get some form, which is good, especially after the break that we've had. So happy days. But you were going to say something, Sean?
I was just going to say, on Johnson, there was one point where he was in an offside position on the left wing in the first half, rather. And I was like, surely that's going to get reeled in a little bit. I mean, there's all for being an attacking fullback, and then there's being offside on the opposite side of the pitch,
Well, I was trying to think of how you could equate that to some sort of metric, what kind of fullback is he? Is he like a diagonal fullback? But I'm just not smart enough with that kind of stuff. So I kind of gave up on that idea. But yeah, watching him, particularly in that second half, I thought, yeah, he's taken this pretty well. And I remember exactly what you've picked up on. And I thought maybe taking to this a little too well. So yes, I think that'll be reined in a little bit.
And Liam, sorry, you, mate.
Yeah.
No, Sean, you go ahead.
No, I was going to go off on one, so you go on.
Well, to be honest, you guys have summed it all up pretty well, because I was jet lagged to hell that night and I barely remember the game apart from the goals. So I think there's not really much I can add to this conversation. So go ahead and rant away.
No, I was actually going to talk about fullbacks and how modern football seems to be divided on this. But what Postecoglou does, it's different from most modern coaches, is what he does with his fullbacks. And I think there's some books kicking around about that, Ange Ball and stuff like that. Because if you watch a Guardiola team, it's all about the fullbacks getting to the byline and coming in around the wing. But in Postecoglou, your fullbacks will come in to be the kind of almost number 6 role, come into the midfield as almost a centre mid. So that kind of direction that the fullbacks move is what Postecoglou has in his system that stands out from other teams. Just on what you were mentioning, Shane.
Just on that, Sean, as well, what he does is, a lot of teams, they were playing that, there was that 4-2-3-1 formation that everyone was playing for years, right? Mm-hmm. So with us only playing the 1-6 in Kilmarnock, then the inverted, say if the ball's out on the right wing back's going to stay out, the left one's going to tuck in to basically be your second number 6 alongside him. So inverting it in that way is basically taking that from what everyone used to do, but then still having a guy out being attacking on the other side. So kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and it gives you 3 players for a triangle on that whatever side once the fullbacks come in there. Because you've got your Matt O'Reilly or Rio Tati, whoever's on whatever side, you've got your winger and then you've got your fullback, and it forms a triangle, which is something that I wasn't on last week to talk about it, but when we played Sevco and Juranovic came on, it wasn't just what he was doing defensively, he was offering nothing offensively. There was one point where Hitati went forwards and he links up with Maeda, and the two of them are looking round for the third man, and Juranovic was nowhere, and the move just breaks down. So without that kind of fullback supporting those triangles, our system just fails, which was kind of really Juranovic's one of his biggest problems last week, apart from the fact that he was poor defensively.
And if I can just step in for a sec, I think that probably highlights or maybe underlines what I was trying to say about Johnston. It's not that kind of system that I would imagine would be, I wouldn't say not easy, but obviously that takes a little bit of time to refine and get used to, because I don't imagine you maybe come through a youth career kind of playing as an inverted fullback or anything like that. So for him to kind of show that movement and flexibility already and, still keep his defensive position when he needs to, I think he's really shown that he can pick this up very quickly. And on that basis alone and his form, I think he's a really encouraging signing so far. And I think he'll continue to grow, which is just really, exciting.
So last week on the pod, I said that I was a little unsure with Ange, in the derby, why I thought he put Juranovic at left back was I wasn't sure how he wanted to go in that sort of environment with Johnson and Bernabei on the pitch together. Now, I'd like to get your opinion on how Bernabei played, because having only seen the highlights and looking at the stats and everyone giving their star ratings, he was our lowest of our starting players. So,
Really?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So,
Not
from what
at
I'm
all
here,
for
like
me.
Bernabei 3.8 out of 5, Joe Hart 3.9, everyone else was 4 and above.
I don't know where that's coming from, to be totally honest with you. Like, because I watch him quite critically. Like he kind of
Okay, that
gets
explains it.
he
That star ratings.
Yeah, I really focus on him when I'm watching, like the same way that I kind of focus on Starfield and Moy, because I feel like those are the sort of players that are just, like if you got your Jota and Carter Vickers level, and then like when you come down, the ones that are at the bottom of the starting 11 for me are like your Starfield, Bernabei, Moy, like those kind of level players. So I watched them a bit more critically, and I thought that was not Bernabei's necessarily best game potentially, but it was certainly very good. I'm very surprised at that star rating.
I'm probably not. I wasn't as bullish as Sean. I thought he had a poor start, and I thought that he probably didn't have a good first half overall. I felt apart from that pass that he played Maeda in, but I thought second half he looked a lot better. Look, it's enough for me to go, I definitely want to see him continue. Like, I think there's a little bit of concern there at left back if he doesn't find form. I think we could still be looking at bringing someone in potentially, but after that second half, I looked at it and thought, you know what, he's got another couple of weeks. Let's see. But it was encouraging in the end. Look, I thought it probably was his best game for the club, but still, I didn't think he had the best of first halves.
Bring up this comment here from Vanessa. So, watch Bernabei against Sydney. Didn't look good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't too keen on him out here either, but he's got to get a bit of a run into him. So
to give a bit of a defense for him, though, sorry, Liam.
No, you go ahead, Sean.
He wasn't the only one to look poor out here against Sydney. There was about 4 or 5 I think you could put into that bracket.
Yep, I agree.
What I was going to say was, if we're not sure about Bernabei, now personally I think Bernabei came on to a good game at the weekend from what I remember of it. But Hatate played at right back a couple of games ago against Hibs, did very well, I thought. He earned Kawasaki's Player of the Year playing mostly at left back in his final season before moving to Celtic. So we've got somebody there who can step in and do the job. I think, based on current form, if Bernabei can, Bernabei is the natural left back, so he should be the first preference. But if his form doesn't hit the standard, then Hatate can come in. I would rather have Hatate playing there than have Juranovic playing out of position again, because if Juranovic stays, which seems unlikely, but even if he did, I would still think that for me at the moment, until Greg Taylor comes back, it's Bernabei or Hatate in that position, as far as I'm concerned.
I have to agree with you on that, Liam, in that we've seen it, like, it was a bit of a discussion on that in the Axom chat and in our group chat and a few other chats that we're in, some of us are involved in, that with Taylor being out, this is Bernabei's chance to establish himself and make it and prove that he should be in this squad and in this opportunity, and that he's ready to challenge Taylor for that spot. To me, Taylor's probably been our player of the season so far, just with his consistency and his level of performance. So it's kind of made it hard for Bernabei to get a chance. So now he's got his chance. Prove that you're at the level. Prove that you're good enough. I would rather Bernabei play and get the run of games than have Hatate playing out of position and then we're robbing Peter to pay Paul by putting one of our best central midfielders at left back and weakening our midfield. I'd rather keep our midfield nice and sweet and give Bernabei his chance, and worst case scenario, if we have to do it with play Hatate there occasionally or whatever, fine. But I want Bernabei to get first crack at it and try and make the position his own and put some pressure on Greg, because if he does that, it just means the challenges, they're going to be challenging each other, which means their levels is going to get higher and higher and higher.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
On the subject of Hatate playing there, to me, like Hatate being a midfielder at fullback is very much similar to Bernabe, who's a winger being at fullback. Do you know what I mean? Like it's basically putting that, it's normally I'd give Bernabe the edge because he's left-footed in that debate. In the first 5 minutes of that game against Kilmarnock, they did target. You're talking about him having a poor start. They were targeting him, like with Vassell and with extra players. They were closing down his outpass. There was one moment where he plays an incredible 1-2, like along the line with Hatate to get out that pressure. And even then, they were still having Vassell target him as well. And then they kind of went away from that as well because Carter Vickers just kept covering. And there was one point where your man Vassell got the run in behind Bernabe, and Carter Vickers just went over and just waited and then just put his body in between Vassell and the ball. And, the guy just kept going down. Like, he couldn't deal with Carter Vickers was an absolute rock in behind. So it did help Bernabe that he did have Carter Vickers covering him there. And we're playing Kilmarnock again this weekend. So I'd say that Derek McKinnon said after the game, they need to find what the answer is for dealing with Celtic because we're the best Celtic team he's ever played. And he mentioned compared to the Invincibles as well. So I'd say that Kilmarnock's tactic this weekend is going to be much the same. It's going to be park 2 buses. It's going to be time waste as much as you can. It's going to be, and then it's basically try and stay within 1 goal to try and then bring Kyle Lafferty on for the last 15-20 minutes. And I'd imagine they'll stick Kyle Lafferty on top of Bernabe when he does come on.
Throw those elbows in a Bernabe and see what he can do. If he can cause some damage on the scoreboard or damage by taking out another one of our players. But sounds like what you're saying, Sean, is it's a typical Derek McInnes hatchet job against Celtic. He's got no idea how to beat us, so he goes out there to try and kick the shit out of us and then go from there.
Well, the only thing that's going to be different this Saturday is that the pitch will be bigger, which is probably good for someone like Bernabe, and that we won't have our own ball boys who were marked out of the game by Alan Power. So teams are actually in the point now where they're intercepting passes from the ball boys. I don't know if you've seen that video, but yeah, I've stuck it on my 10-minute quickie video if you want to check it out. Alan Power intercepting a pass from a ball boy and then running away with the ball. I don't know how that's not a booking is beyond me. Referees are going to allow teams to do this, and it's not really a good look. It doesn't really encourage positive play in Scottish football. I get it helps if you're Kilmarnock and you're just trying to not get murdered violently on the football pitch, but is that good for Scottish football? I wouldn't have thought so.
I'll let you boys keep talking about that for a second. I'm just trying to find some stats that I saw yesterday, which ties into something Sean was saying. So, what do you think? We'll preview the game on the weekend first before we get into the other stuff. So let's talk about the League Cup. It's Saturday over there, Sunday morning our time. So do you think we're going to have many changes there, or do you think it's going to be pretty much what we played on the weekend just gone? What do you think, Shane?
Look, I don't expect many changes. It wouldn't surprise me if we had the same starting 11, to be honest. I know Ange does like to make a few tweaks here and there, but I'm expecting, if not that same starting 11, close to. Whether or not Moy goes out for O'Reilly is probably the one I'm thinking of at the moment. I thought O'Reilly looked pretty fresh when he came on in his small cameo against Killy. And I didn't think Moy, whilst he was still good on the ball, I didn't think he had the most... Well, he didn't have kind of the usual impact he does playing as that most... Or seemingly playing as that most advanced midfielder. So maybe O'Reilly comes back in for Moy. That's all I can really see.
Yeah, I would pretty much agree with that. I think you don't change a winning team unless you have to, especially if it's the same team you're playing against, and as Sean said, they're going to set up exactly the same way. But bigger pitch, I think also the kind of the pressure's off a bit because we've already beat them recently, and they're going to have to try a different game plan, Kilmarnock. But I think that they only have one game plan against us, and it is just a brick wall. And they once we find our way through that, I think it could open up a lot more than it did at the weekend. If we can get the goal a bit earlier, get a couple of goals early, perhaps. I could see it being a 3 or 4-0. I think we could do a number on them because we should have done that last weekend were it not for that bloody goal post. But there you go.
Yeah, but also, like as you're saying, it's wide open spaces at Hampden, so it's more room. And then also, as we're saying, well, they're going to have a different game plan because it's a cup semi-final. You want to get in the cup final, you got to win. So they can't sit back the way they do. If we get an early goal, then they have to come out and play, and then that opens things up more. So it's a bit of give and take. Like, if they can keep it 0-0 or just one goal in our favour or whatever going into the last 20 minutes, then that's the game they want. If we can get one or two in the first half, then all bets are off.
Yeah, and look, this is why we need a 2-goal lead for the games to open up. Is teams, well, it's 1-0 down, they're like, yep, that's fine, we'll just keep it to 1-0 and hope to just get a set piece late in the game or something like that, you know. And that's why we absolutely killed them after the subs at the weekend was, you know, we were bringing on outstanding players of outstanding quality, you know, James Forrest, Matt O'Reilly, Giacomakis, fresh legs. You know, we actually went up a gear when those subs came on with fresh legs. It wasn't like, and it's going to be the same at the weekend, but I don't know. I don't know why teams think that's going to work. Has it ever worked? When did it last work? Was the only team that's beaten us this year was St Mirren, who got 2 goals. Were they both first half goals?
Yeah.
2 set pieces?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Was it 1 set piece or 2 set pieces? But either way, that's your tactic, isn't it? Yeah, I don't really see what else. Teams are really playing for draw. And when you're playing for a draw, being 1 goal down is the same as being already drawing.
Yep. All right, we've got a question here for you, Liam, from Vanessa in the comments. How will the new Japanese player fit into the team? Will he be a starting player? So we're talking about Tomoki Iwata. You were at the press conference as well for that. So what we'll do is we'll get you to answer that question and then give us a little chat about the press conference that you did.
Okay, well, to answer the question, he himself said that he sees himself as a typical number 6 defensive midfielder. Now, Cal Mack is, of course, our number 1 guy in that position, but there are going to be times where we're going to need 2 players like that. For example, perhaps in a game against a team like Kilmarnock where you want a wee bit more steel, a bit more aggression in the midfield as opposed to flair. So I don't know if he's going to start every game, but I do think he will play an important part in the squad. There's going to be a bit of moving in and about there. You might find O'Reilly drops out here and there, and Iwata might come in there. Moy might drop, Moy's going to drop out occasionally. Calmack might need a rest from time to time. And like I said, there's going to be formations, games against, for example, Sevco, whatever. We might want to have the 2 tackling midfielders. So I think he's definitely got a very involved role to play in the rest of the season. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do. Now, to expand on the press conference yesterday, it was interesting. He seems to have a better command of English than the other players did coming in, because I could tell with his reactions that he understood some of the questions before they were translated. So he clearly has but now it shouldn't really matter, but that will perhaps give him a slight edge in terms of bedding in more quickly if he already knows the language. He said that his idol growing up was Ronaldinho, but he's not that type of player. As I say, he's a defensive midfield number 6. And he also said that I asked him about the prospect of basically playing a season and a half without a major break, because the J League runs from March to November, and then he's come in December. So he's not really had a break, but he said he had about 2 or 3 weeks off, as the way things worked out. And he loves football, so he'll play anytime, which is something that I think is really good to hear. So he said that there's no lack of desire. There is no fatigue on his part, mental or physical. He's up for it. He can't wait to get started. And he was making all the right noises. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do.
Good. Looking forward to seeing him in the hoops out there playing. Do you think he'll be on the bench this weekend?
Hope so. Yeah, I think him and Kobayashi both could make an appearance if we're a couple of goals up by halftime.
Nice.
I wouldn't have thought he'd have any trouble settling in with all the Chinese players that we've got already at the club.
What a bunch of knobs. I sent through that zombie watch thing last night to everyone, but it was just unbelievably stupid.
Oh, God.
It was brilliant. There was some, for those who don't know, I'm trying to find it now. There was a video on like a video pod like what we're doing on one of the Rangers channels, and the absolute pillock on there, I had to use that term because it's a good one, is trying to say that he's done his research and Chinese players don't get along well with Korean players, even though they're allies. But he's done his research. The only Chinese player at Celtic is in the women's team. So clearly he's done his research. His research probably included, playing with himself and, taking his Dilutamol tablets and, staring at his photo of the Queen or the King on the wall, whatever, and singing, Rule Britannia and all this sort of crap. But, he's done his research. Dickhead.
Edward in the comments reckons
Rangers rabble.
Rangers rabble were baiting. I'm
I'm
not sure. I think he's giving them too much credit.
Well,
Come on.
could be said they are masters of baiting, but let's not go there.
Hey.
Boom.
I'm trying to find that sound effect.
So you've reached for it. I just went for the a cappella version of it.
I was reaching for it, and then you did it, Sean. I'm like, oh well, that one. And because we're talking about them.
Reminds me of that time I was driving the motor and I ran over the wee boy with the drum kit. Ba-dum-dum. Oh, come on. Right, okay, I've just killed it. I'm sorry.
Moving on. Jackie Marcus.
But moving on, we'll get into some of the transfer stuff happening. But yeah, there's quite a few transfer rumors bouncing around. I look at it this way. We've spoken about there's 2 guys, probably 3 that'll be moving out. Let's be honest. So you were saying, Liam, about Awada coming in and having another good number 6. I think that he's been signed to play the position that Abelgard was brought in on loan for.
Yeah.
So if Abelgard goes, fine, whatever. See you later. Itaguchi will go. More than likely, that's all the talk.
Yeah.
Then the other ones that we're talking about, okay, so there's 4 actually. You've got Juranovic, Giakoumakis. They're the 4 main guys everyone's talking about. Where there's smoke, there's fire. So we can go through all that sort of stuff. I think I actually sat there today and was watching Inter Milan Monza 2-2 draw. It was on the TV, so I was watching that today. And I don't know, the game at Monza, the crowd are loud, but they're small crowds compared to Celtic. They already have a somewhat decent right back, so Monza, I think, would be a bad move for him. Talk there was a loan with like £1 million loan deal with the option to buy for $8 million in the summer. That's what is rumoured. Then you've also got Barcelona snooping around. You've got Atletico has scouted him, all the others. So there's heaps of stuff. So I think there's still plenty to happen there. Sean, what's your take on the Juranovic one? We'll go through them all individually, go around the group.
The only way that anything makes sense with that is if he has a release clause for the summer. So the whole loan to then obligation to buy in the summer would suggest to me that he has a £7 or £8 million pound release clause that triggers in June or July or whatever like that. And the only way that makes sense is if the reason why any player would have a release clause like that coming to Celtic would be that we brought them in on a very low salary to begin with. So if you're bringing in players on low salaries, then what their agents will do as a trade-off for that is say, well, if that's what you think my client is worth, then we'll put a release clause in that matches that salary, which is to me suggests, and I'm actually going to say, I reckon based on the chat about Giakoumakis' salary and the fees, which he's also been mentioned, I'm going to say he also probably has a similar release clause. Now, these two players both arrived at the same time. I believe they were both Dominic Mackay products of negotiation, which again, this is not something we've ever done in the past. We've never had release clauses, but it might well be that Dominic Mackay is taking a different tact on these things and shaved a couple of thousand off the weekly salary by doing that, by allowing these players to have the release clauses. Now, should we, again, I don't know this, I'm just basing that on the talk that's going around, is it's the only thing that makes sense to me for the numbers that are going around and the timing of what's happening. Do you guys agree? Do you think I'm wrong?
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, numbers wise, that's the only way that an offer like that would even get close for a player who's played in the World Cup, later stages, international, so many caps, whatever. Now, the other thing is that apparently when he left Legia Warsaw, their fans were cracking up because there was a similar clause in the contract he had with them. So, yeah, it could be a Dominic Mackay thing, but it could also be something that Juranovic himself, his agent, has insisted on as part of the deal.
18 months at every club, Liam. If you look at his club history, it's 18 months to 2 years at every club. So,
yeah. So that would chime with what we suspect, because there's no way he goes for under 15 million if we can dictate the terms. That, something's not right there.
Vanessa said she'll take 5 million for GG and 15 for Juranovic. I think if we could get 15 to 20 for Juranovic and about 8 million for Giakoumakis, 8 to 10, that's more like it. Now, if Juranovic has a clause in the summer, then wouldn't we be looking at it going, all right, let's try and flog him now and get him off the wage bill now and get him his move now and take more money than that if someone desperately wants him?
Well, I think that's the point of the loan, isn't it? We're going to get a $1.5 million loan fee, and then they'll pay the release clause in the summer, something like that. So you're getting release clause plus the next 4 months.
Yeah, no, I was saying more like, okay, if you've got, say, Barcelona or Atletico looking at him and they want him now, for instance, then all right, you want him now. He's got a clause for 8 million. Give us 12 plus add-ons after so many. It brings him up to 15 or whatever. You'd look at doing something like that to get more than that 9 to 10 million you'd get there. But anyway, we've already got his replacement in the door. He's playing well. So at the end of the day, sometimes addition by subtraction is the best way to go.
I mean, the sell-on clause goes out the window if there's two teams that want him badly enough. That's always the thing to remember.
I don't think so, because they just both, they can't outbid each other at that point. They just, do you know what I mean?
You're right. Yeah, sorry, I'm talking mince. Ignore me.
It becomes a battle for wage at that point.
It's then about what
salary dries up.
Who does the player want? You're right. Yeah.
But yeah, like in terms of GG going for 5 million as well, I'd say he is worth more than 5 million. As like if Kyogo tears a hamstring next week, then we'd really regret having lost Giakoumakis for 5 million. He's worth more than that. The amount of money we could get for winning the league and the fact we'll have hopefully 2 cup finals in the next 4 months, I'd say I wouldn't be letting for Giakoumakis go for less than, 10 million. But again, there could be a release clause involved. And my main concern with no matter what the fee is for Giakoumakis would be we don't have a replacement in the door at the moment.
So we've got a couple of comments here on the Giakoumakis thing, not Giakoumakis, on Juranovic one, where Andrew Galao, when Juranovic came in, we only had Ralston, who was yet to develop into what he is now. Maybe we had to accept the clause to get him in the door. That's a good point.
Quite possible.
Yep, true.
John Dean has also, if JJ has a release clause of 8 million, why would clubs just pay that?
What do you mean? Like, why would clubs?
I'm saying, well, get him to pay more now for him. He's probably saying, well, why would they when you could get him for 8 million in the summer?
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm agreeing with John there. They would just pay the 8 million, and if they want him now, then they would pay the 8 million and then whatever the loan fee would be. Because that's probably the only reason he's still here at the moment is because his agent's going around telling teams he's available in June for this much. So the only teams that are coming in now are ones that need a right back between now and June. Otherwise, you're just going to wait.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point, because obviously the chatter just, during the World Cup and post the World Cup, we were wondering how long he would actually be around for. And, all of a sudden it's dragging out a bit longer. And then this figure comes up and I hadn't really formulated in my head. I think you've articulated what the situation is perfectly. Like, I couldn't work out why we were looking at this going, well, he's worth 20 mil or close to 20 mil or 20 mil plus. And then all of a sudden they're coming in at 7 mil and going, something's not right here. But then what you've explained makes perfect sense. And you're right. If his agent's going around saying, look, you can get him for this value in summer, I think probably that backs up John's point, which is, well, why would they cave in and pay more now? They'll just wait.
I'd say it's also a reasonable explanation for why we keep taking these Japanese players on loan to buy as well. So I don't know if that's something we can dig into and see if that's true. But that's 3 players now, I believe, from Japan that we've taken in January on loan for 6 months with an obligation to buy in June. It might be to do with just accounting, but we're paying so little for these players. That also, to me, seems like release clause, because we paid 3.5-4 million for Kyogo, but every other player we're saying for Japan's been like 1.5 million. You've got to imagine these players have got release clauses that trigger when a European club comes in the summer. Over to
you, Liam. You've discussed this before. Over to you.
Yeah, that's a possibility, but I wouldn't be so sure about it, because the low fee, the relatively low fees we've paid for the Japanese players are not necessarily connected to their future movement. It's the idea that when a Japanese player has the chance to go to Europe, it's kind of the J League's responsibility to make sure it happens, because it's good for the profile of Japanese football and it's good for the national team to have more players playing in Europe. So hence why someone like Kubo, who was, being touted as the next big prospect in Japan after Nakata, after Nakamura, he went to Real Madrid initially for something like 1.6 million. And when we signed Kyogo, I think that was actually the J League, the record for a player leaving the J League at that time, or close to it. So the idea actually is just the Japanese clubs don't want to get in the way of a player's ambition, so they sell for a relatively low price. But in turn, they can then go and sign good players within Japan for a fraction of that again. So it's a bit like Celtic in the sense that we buy low, we sell higher. In Japan, Yokohama got Maeda for something like 200,000 or 300,000, and they've then sold him to us for about 2 million. So it's still a several-fold profit for them. But then we would then be looking to move him on for 10 to 12 million if we sell him in a year or two. It's just the next rung down on the ladder, really. That is why, and we'll come to it in a minute, why I don't think Giakoumakis is going to Japan, because the numbers just do not make sense.
Yeah, that's the next one. But before we go to that, there's one comment here from John Dean I want to bring up. Where he's going to also, if we think JJ is worth 15 million or more, would Celtic pay that now to get him ourselves? He's already our player, so we'll be paying ourselves on that, based on that, John. So I
think he means if Juranovic was elsewhere, would we pay 15 million to bring him here?
Is that what you meant? Because there's no chance we pay that. Our club records, what, 9 million for Edouard. So
yeah, we don't pay above 7 or 8 million for anybody. That's just not in our game plan.
15 million is the all-time Scottish record for Torrandre Flo when he went to. Yeah, it actually was Rangers back then. So yeah.
It's economies of scale, isn't it? Like Shakhtar Donetsk selling Mudryk soon. If teams like RB Leipzig were coming in, they'd be saying, oh yeah, 25, 30 million. But when teams like Arsenal and Man United are coming in, then obviously
Premier League money. It's the Premier League tax. Yep.
Yeah. So it's not just to do with the selling club, it's to do with the buying club as well.
Yep. All right, so we're talking about George's Giakoumakis rumours. So as Liam just touched on, he's been linked with Uwara Red Diamonds. I don't know, I've completely butchered that, haven't I, Liam?
Mitsubishi team. Urawa, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. In Japan, he's had Sampdoria in Italy, and then there's unnamed teams in the Middle East. the MLS, Russia, and Germany are all also talking to his agent. So if you've been if you look at it this way, he was the top goal scorer in Holland, top goal scorer in Scotland last year. He's not getting a start every week. I can understand his frustrations, why he'd want to move on. But Liam, you were saying about the Red Diamonds. You've mentioned that they're basically the Huns of Japan. So we'll throw that one over to you.
The West Coast Eagles of Japan.
I knew you were going to do that. How dare you? How dare you lump my club in with them?
Right. Yeah, well, Urawa Reds have a reputation for racism amongst their supporters. They were fined several million yen and forced to play, I think it was 2 or 3 games behind closed doors back in 2017, 2016. Because their fans unveiled an anti-Korean banner when the opposing team had a Korean striker. But they have a reputation for doing that to other nationalities as well, not just Koreans. And it's a bit like in the sense that, for the longest time, the old Rangers wouldn't sign a Catholic. There was a lot of shall we say, animosity towards Urawa signing anybody who wasn't Japanese. So they're a particularly nasty team. They've got a hooligan element amongst their support. I don't like them. I don't like them at all. But they are, in terms of support, probably the second biggest team in Japan, or Yokohama. But they are not the type of team that's going to pay £7 or £8 million for a player.
What kind of crowds do they get?
Kind of regularity. So
when you're saying they're the second biggest team, what sort of crowds would they get?
Right. Average gate probably 25 to 30,000, but their stadium can hold up to 60.
Okay, so they'd be like the third biggest team in Scotland, kind of thing.
Aye. They're probably about the same size as, like, to think of an English example, maybe like a Fulham or a Brentford or something like that.
So
25 to 30,000.
The stadium capacity is 63,700.
Yeah,
it's more than us.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, they've played Japan national games there before. I think it was one of the World Cup stadiums, the Saitama 2002 stadium. Yeah.
Yep.
Aye. But yeah, they have Mitsubishi behind them, which means they do have the money to pay 7 or 8 million for a player, but with the J League economy, that just does not make sense. They could get a player as good as Giakoumakis for about probably a third of that if they shopped more, shall we say, more locally. You get quite a lot of Brazilian players coming into Japan because it's easier for them to nationalize, so that gets around the 5 foreigners rule. You also have other Asian countries, Korea, China, whatever. They like to facilitate moves into the J League because the J League is regarded as the premier league in Asia, certainly Eastern Asia. So, yeah.
So I'm surprised what you're saying there about them being easy to nationalize, as in to get a passport, because Japan is absolutely infamous for taking absolutely zero refugees every year.
Unless they're good at sports.
So it's a Qatar thing. Yeah, okay.
Basically. It's not as bad as it used to be, but for example, the 1998 World Cup, the Japan squad, I think 5 or 6 of that squad were born in Brazil. There was like Wagner Lopez, there was Tulio, there was about 5 or 6 of them. But anyway, I'm going off to a tangent. The Brazilians in particular, because there is a lot of Japanese Brazilians, just historically. There's a lot of movement between the two countries, so they do make it easier for them to nationalize. It's usually once you've been in the country for now. Someone like me, technically, I could go for a Japanese passport once I've been in the country for 5 years, but I'm highly unlikely to get it. There's a fast track where sports players, I think, can get it within 3 years. Possibly less if they have even the slightest hint of a Japanese lineage. The old Japanese granny or whatever. But yeah, with Brazilian players, that there's definitely a a pathway to make that happen more regularly, which is why if you look at all the top J League transfers of all time, most of them are Brazilians, but the top foreign transfers anyway. So
I've
yeah,
got some info for you, Liam, on Uara Red Diamonds.
Yep.
So last season, their average crowd was 23,617 people per game.
Nailed it.
And in 2019, before lockdowns, Uara Red Diamonds were ranked number 48 of all the clubs in the world for their average match attendance. 48 in the world.
Yeah.
With an average of 36,468. So with their stadium and everything, they can understand all of that. But yeah, just getting back to Giakoumakis for a minute, like looking at some of the comments that we're going to discuss them. So Edward Y. Voz is saying GG should be 5 times what Morelos is going for. 5 times nothing is still nothing, mate, because he's about to go on a free.
But the point is valid.
He is only about a fifth of the size of Morelos, so
The point is absolutely valid though, that Giakoumakis is the second best striker in Scotland.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%.
Yep.
And then we've got a couple of comments here from Andrew Galea. So if Ange really rated GG, he wouldn't be going. Ange obviously thinks we can trade up. I reckon Cho is a trade up. And then to follow up on that, GG can finish. Cho looks better with the ball at his feet, plus he can finish. So, look, I'd be happy to have both of them, to be honest with you, because as I said last week, Kyogo is one type of striker, Giakoumakis is another. Cho's like the middle between the two of them, so I'd be happy with that. And then we've got, hate to see Liam here from down at the Tassie CSC. Hate to see GG go for too little, but there has to be something behind it, 100%. That's what we were saying. Mahesh is coming up saying Anthony Joseph thinks Celtic are the front runner for Cho despite a high Minnesota bid. We'll discuss that in a couple of minutes. Gorilla in Manila. Looking at the clubs that are in for Giakoumakis, we should be capable of keeping him. He's a big, strong, physical striker who can score goals for fun. A player like that is not easy to come by. Exactly. I agree with you. We should be able to keep him, but it's going to be a wage thing, in my opinion. There you go. Angelo got a nice comment. Brisbane Roar could go for Morelos as a last resort. Slight problem. Brisbane's just as broke as the Huns.
They just lost to Perth Glory last night. That's how bad they are.
Well, they've actually been in good form. They've actually been in decent form, getting pretty good results. The Perth result was a little bit of a shock.
Yeah, we're homeless. They lost us.
Yes.
All right. So,
I know nothing about Brisbane beyond that Billy Connolly quote. He said, "If the world needs an enema, they should insert it in Brisbane." So that's all I know about Brisbane.
Yeah, there's not much going on there. One other thing about Chogu's song is I'd not thought about until I heard it somewhere else. I can't remember now. Is he's already?
Sean, do you want to just let me throw to you for that then?
Yeah, sorry.
Because I was going to talk about Cho next. So where Maish was saying that we're the front runner for it, well, Celtic have outbid Mains with an offer about £3 million. Apparently, we're meeting with the director of football for his club, Park Ji-sung, in London later this week to discuss the move further. Minnesota, from what I've read and heard, they've matched the same bid as us. But what were you going to say, Sean?
I was going to say something that I'd heard that I hadn't considered previously is that he's already completed his military national service, so we wouldn't. That's not something we'd have to factor into his future value.
That's a good one, yeah. So, as Liam's saying, got Liam from Tassie, not Liam here. Are we all on the Cho train then?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy. I saw a tweet earlier today as well, but it was like there's that guy playing for, what is it, Rosenborg or something? Tungstad or whatever it is. What's it, Casper Tengstedt, I think?
Aye.
There you go. So he's banging in the goals for fun as well. Danish international. The rumours are we're further down the road with him than we currently are with Cho, but a bid's in for both players. Now, Vanessa's brought this up saying Huns sniffing around for Cho.
Nonsense.
They can, you know what? They can sniff around anything. They don't have the money to make an offer. So they can be linked and anything. We're starting to see the old media story where Celtic and Rangers are linked for blah, blah, blah. So it's like a battle for the players. Come on now. They don't have money. They couldn't afford to buy themselves a new washing machine.
This is all part of the attempt to construct the narrative where Rangers will say, we went in for him, we decided we don't want him, so he's going to Celtic. And it's like, yeah, mate, you were never actually in the bidding. But, you know, the media can then create this narrative that he's a Rangers cast-off that we've managed to somehow pick up, you know. Nah, it's just a complete and utter fabrication.
Yeah, let's just see him do that like they tried to do with John Hartson back in the day.
Well, just on the on Cho, and just to sort of take a circle back a little bit to what Sean was mentioning about Giakoumakis. So I share the same concerns as Sean in a sense that if he does go, unless we get someone like Cho in or Tengsted, we don't really have that, I guess, really good second fiddle striker, if you will. And seeing Giakoumakis on the weekend against Killy and we've said it a couple of times, but that different dynamic that he provides in comparison to when Kyogo plays is really valuable and really helpful when you're looking to sort of either get that elusive second goal, even get a goal if you're still deadlocked, or even push on further, because it just gives the defenders who have sort of prepped themselves for Kyogo and really kind of honed in on stopping him. You bring Giakoumakis on, and all of a sudden, he's kind of got the hop on them with the way that he plays and the way that he moves. And, you know, he looked great against Killy, and he should have scored to make it 3 or 4-0. And seeing him like that, all of a sudden, I was like, you know what? I would love to keep him because he is valuable. But if he does go, we've got to have Cho or Tengsted come in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's why he hasn't gone yet, because we were not even considering entertaining offers for Juranovic until Johnson came in. And I think that's kind of the way forward now, is that even going back as far as, when we brought in Edouard, while we still had I'm going blank here, Dembele, we brought him in while we still had him, with the view to Edouard being the successor.
And Griffiths. I was about saying Griffiths as well.
Aye. But the idea that we don't get rid of a player until we have either a replacement or an improvement lined up. And I agree with what people have been saying, that Cho is an improvement on Giakoumakis. I think he has everything that Giakoumakis has to his game and more. This boy from Rosenborg is one I know absolutely nothing about, I'll be quite honest with you. So,
well, throwing it out there, if Giakoumakis goes, is there a possibility that we bring in both Cho and Tengsted, or is it one or the other? We simply won't be able to afford both.
Well, but to answer that, we'll go through some comments first, Shane, and then I'll answer you, because I'm looking at this going, so you're saying that then Liam O'Connor's like, we need another striker. So it's almost like we need one anyway, even if we kept Giakoumakis. But then RL77 was saying before, GG is also very valuable when we are defending. That's something that hasn't been touched on. Vanessa was saying big commercial opportunity for Celtic in Korea if we buy Cho. Mahesha said Anthony Joseph mentioned 4.2 million bid for Cho from Minnesota, upping Celtic's bid of 3.4 million, but his good friend Son from Spurs has told Cho to come to Europe, so hopefully that plays in his favour. And then you've got GG almost dropped back into midfield to get that long-range effort. But the last comment here was GG can't stick a pass with his back to goal. So where you're saying, do we need to bring both in? Potentially, but it's going to depend how much we get for Giakoumakis. Like, if we get Cho in first, great. There's a few teams in, I think, Germany and Italy are also looking at Tengsted, so that one may become a bit of a bidding war. So if one goes out, one has to come in as an absolute minimum, but I currently think we're already one striker down anyway.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think we need 3 top strikers, but I also think we're tricking this by having Maeda on the left wing. So I think by having 4 wingers and 2 strikers and also Maeda, as either your fifth winger or your third striker. I think we're kind of
Covers you off, yeah.
gaming that a little bit at the moment.
Yep. Now, Michael Ross, hail, sorry I'm a bit late. Come on, mate, lift your game. Nah, only kidding. Thanks for tuning in. Just hit that notification bell so you'll get notified when we go live every Wednesday. So, yeah, glad you're on board. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in with the comments. We've got 2 more little transfer things to talk about, and then we'll wrap the podcast up. So, apparently, Stephen Welsh is moving to Hibs on a permanent deal. That's the talk, to replace Porteous. What with Kobayashi coming in, all the centre backs we've got, I'll throw to you first, Liam. What's your thoughts on that move? Good business, bad business? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's good for Welsh because he's at the age now where he needs to be playing every week, and he will play every week at Hibs because he's definitely good enough. In fact, probably better than that level. But it's just, as soon as we signed Kobayashi, I thought that's it for Welsh, because his only chance of really getting back into the first team was going to be if Carter Vickers or Starfelt picked up a long-term injury. And then you've got Jens, and then now you've also got Kobayashi. So basically he's 3 injuries away from getting a game, which is not a place to be when you're a young developing player. So yeah, Hibs are a good team. They play good football. I think he will do well there, and I think it's good for all concerned. Yeah, so it's a shame it's not worked out, but I wish him well.
My take, and I've said it before, is I thought he needed a Chris Iyett sort of move. So I was hoping we'd send him on loan second half of this season and still hang around. But if he wants to go on a permanent and he goes to Hibs, great. He can go to Hibs on a permanent, but I want us to have either a nice big chunky sell-on fee or the a buyback option, or both. If he's going to stay in Scotland, that's great. We can do that, but then give us both of them. So if, say, we want to buy him back in 2 years' time, we can get him back for £3 million or something, great. If they get sold for $5 million, then we get 60% of it. So we're making the same money anyway. Big chunk of cash. That's what I'd like to see. But Sean, what do you think?
I'm actually, what I was when I was thinking about this, I was like, oh no, we can't, because like same thing you kind of guys are saying. We'd be quite remorseful if we lost him and he became a player. But also, because sometimes players kind of click a little bit later. And then the one that I was thinking of as an example was Anthony Ralston. And then I went and checked, and Tony Ralston is 1 year younger than 1 year older than Stephen Welsh. Stephen Welsh turns 23 next week. Yeah. So, surely, yeah, and he's had 18 months under Postecoglou. I think we're now at the point where if he's been developing for 18 months, I know first team football makes a big difference, but Postecoglou, I trust his judgment after 18 months with a player who's now turning 23 next week to say this guy's not going to cut it.
Yep. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that's been said. It's a good move for him, and I'm sure he'll get first team football. But like you said, Jared would probably want those extra caveats inserted into any permanent deal.
Now, Liam in Tassie has said buyback or percentage sounds like Football Manager. Where do you think I got the idea, mate? Come on. Andrew Galea is, I'd rather keep Welsh, loan him out, and lose Jens.
Disagree with that, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, disagree.
Then we've got Mahesh here, there's also Lowell who looks better than Welsh. I would agree. From what I've seen, he's a better prospect. And Andrew said that sometimes we're going to have to lose our favourites to improve the squad overall. And I look at it like Welsh is at that point where he hasn't broken in. Andrew's seen enough of him. He's going to be the sort of guy, that we can sell on as an asset to bring in future money as well to help keep this going, while bringing Lowell through and Kobayashi. Then I'm happy with that.
Yep.
We've still got Dane Murray, who's 19 as well.
Yeah, I've got big view on him as well. Incoming Kobayashi and Lowell, outgoing Welsh and Jens. I'll keep Jens for the rest of the season, just for numbers. That's the only reason I keep him. You don't want to be the club that cancels like year-long loan deals halfway through, like multiple in one season. And if we're doing that with Abelgard, you don't want to be doing that for Jens as well.
Yeah.
Last one, Liam. it's being reported that Southampton, you know, that mob down there who just think, oh, we need to sign a player. Who does Celtic have? Are apparently sending scouts up to the League Cup semi on the weekend to watch Maeda. Is that being mentioned in Japan, first of all? And what's your thoughts?
No, it's not being mentioned in Japan. From what I understand, Southampton are pursuing several striking options, and one of the guys that is part of their conversation is Maeda, but there's been no firm interest whatsoever. And in Japan, where we have actual journalists, they don't report this kind of stuff until there is actually something to report. This is just another case of the Daily Record trying to fabricate something to unsettle Celtic ahead of a cup semi-final. So,
Stock standard.
Yep, they can go and chase themselves. If anybody knows anything about chasing, it's Maeda. So,
for me, it doesn't make sense for a simple fact, right? That they're last in the Premier League, and the way they are trying to play wouldn't suit Maeda, because you've seen him in Japan playing on the counter, and you've seen him with us with the pressing. They don't play either of those styles. So from a stylistic style of play, I don't see that as being a good move for Maeda. Now, if they wanted to stump up 15 million and take Giakoumakis, he would suit them more than Maeda would, and the situation they're in.
Yeah. Wait, our Japanese striker's not for sale, but can we interest you in this Greek product, which is just...
Love this comment from Angelo. Those who told Southampton to go see a taxidermist and to get stuffed.
yes.
It's to take a little bit of a different view on it. I think it's not surprising. I mean, obviously, it doesn't sound like Southampton's a good fit, but it's not surprising that other clubs would be looking at Maeda. You know, he had a really good World Cup run, and then since he's returned to Celtic after that World Cup run, he's been excellent. So I'm not surprised that clubs will potentially come in and look at him as an option.
Now, what we'll do is bring up Liam in Tassie's comment here. It would be good if Daily Rangers would write about some Jers going, oh, that's real. All the offers are accepted. Yeah, they're all out of contract. There's like 8 of them out of contract. So Abada's got an upgrade, so that's good news. His thing. Maeda calls Ange boss. Can't see him leaving to be relegated. Exactly. So I think overall, to watch this space, it's a load of bullshit. They're trying to unsettle the Celtic machine that is dominating life yet again in Scotland. So before we end the podcast, just if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Celtic Down Under podcast through your podcast app. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like the channel, hit that notification bell so you get notified every Wednesday when we go live. And you'll also get the notification for Sean's Monday satire weekend wraps, which are pretty good. We're liking them, so keep an eye out for them as well. Also on that, buy our merch. Me and Shane being the models tonight. We've got the T-shirts, the hoodies, nice, thick, warm ones as well. You can get them as well. www.celticdownunder.square.site. They're available on there. Other than that, we'll go to our final thoughts. So I'll go with my final thought first. I want to say congratulations to Ryan Christie, former Celtic player, and his missus. Ryan has actually got a shot on target and got one through the keeper. Congratulations on your on the announcement that he's going to be parents soon. Well done.
Dear.
Over to you, Liam.
God. Right. Well, I'm going to leave you with a wee bit of mathematics here, actually. A statistic which I saw on Twitter with at Everything Celtic. Here's a wee thing to think about. Daisen Maeda, Syed Haksabanovic, and Tomoki Iwata. Combined cost the same as Ben Davis. Joe Hart, Matt O'Reilly, Rio Hatate. The combined cost the same as Ridvan Yilmaz, who I don't think's actually started a game for Rangers yet. Spend smart, not big.
Yep.
Sean?
Yeah, just if anyone, it's some people were asking about the weekend roundup and the audio version of it. There's actually videos overlaid of me talking of like the goals and red card instance and things like that, which is why we're running it on the video only So any
On
feedback.
Twitter.
So it's on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. So, but any feedback at all on that roundup would be quite good, because I've only started it 2 weeks ago, so it's still a product in development. But if you'd like to, if you do also want to have that audio version, maybe just let us know, and we'll see how that develops going forward. Any feedback appreciated. Thank you.
Shane, your final thought?
Look, just a quick one from me. Shout out to my partner who celebrated her birthday over the past weekend, and shout out to everyone who came and helped celebrate what was a special day. And also, go the Eagles!
Flag mantle 2023.
Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for tuning in yet again. Hail, hail. See you next week.
Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.